Hello and welcome. My name is Father William Maestri, and this is Overfed and Undernourished. I think it's safe to say that no aspect of American life, either society as a whole or certainly for individuals, has been left unaffected by recent months in struggling with coronavirus. And I think it can also be safely said that religious institutions and individuals of faith have also been deeply affected, especially in terms of worship, but also beyond that, in terms of religious schools, also in terms of the multiple ministries that people of faith engage in through their churches, through their synagogues, through their mosque, and various other assemblies of worship that they see as a religious outreach from their deep commitment to what God is asking of them, not simply to gather and worship and then kind of leave and forget about what they've said and what they've participated in, but also to make their faith active in the community and to try to make that part of the world that they touch each and every day more godlike and to respect the dignity and sacredness of all human life. And so the various effects of the coronavirus in terms of shutdowns and lockdowns and restrictions have been deeply felt by religious communities, by people of faith across the board. And at first, certainly people of faith wanting to also contribute to the common good and realizing there was so much about the virus that we did not know, and wanting to work for the common good, certainly complied with the various restrictions that took place. But as time progressed, more and more voices of discontent began to arise. Now, when I say discontent, I don't mean in terms of complaining. I'm talking about a kind of discontent that was kind of a longing, a pleading, a hungering for participating in that part of their life, a crucial, essential part of their life, gathering with people of common faith, being active in the various ministries that their churches and synagogues and various assemblies of worship, mosque as well, were involved in terms of making their faith active, not simply on a Sunday or on a Saturday, but also in their daily lives throughout the week. And granted, there were computers and various other kinds of modern instruments that allowed some semblance of participation, but more and more people began to voice that it just wasn't the same, that there was something missing. It may be something like looking at a beautiful film on the Louvre Museum or looking at beautiful books dealing with famous museums or places of interest. But frankly, there's nothing like being there. And that's what people were hungering for and missing. And so eventually, people of faith turned to the courts for relief. And just yesterday, this particular video is being filmed on Saturday, the 27th of June. On June 26th, yesterday, a federal court in New York State, the ruling by U.S. District Judge Gary Sharpe, severely restricted and blocked New York State's restrictions on worship. And in that particular ruling, which was welcomed by many, many segments of the religious communities, but also, I think, people as well who defended First Amendment rights and the right to assembly, the right of free speech, and above all, the natural right to worship God, has one sees fit, without intrusion from government and without government regulations, in conformity with the first liberty, the liberty of religious freedom, as stated in the Bill of Rights. And so this particular suit in New York was brought by 2 priests and by 3 Orthodox Jewish congregants. And I want to be clear that the priests were of the St. Pius X order, which is not affiliated with the Catholic Church. In fact, the Catholic Conference of New York State indicated that they were not part of the suit and that they would follow the state regulations, whatever they were, in their own judgment and in their own decision that obviously is up to them, and I'm sure they have more information than most of us do. But anyway, they went to court and claimed that these particular restrictions were discriminatory. They violated the first liberty, the liberty of religious worship. It also violated the right to assemble and the right of free speech. And Judge Sharpe, in his opinion, sided with the plaintiffs and said that New York had indeed overstepped its boundaries, especially in terms of discriminatory practices. That is, that restaurants, grocery stores, gasoline stations, pharmacies, a whole host of businesses and services were open at around 50% capacity. But church could only open at a much less percentage if they were going to have services, without giving really a compelling reason for this. Now, the interesting thing to me, of course, is that somehow going to restaurants, grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies, engaging in beauty salons, nail salons, barbershops, and a whole host of other things, that was not as much of a danger as people gathering in church in order to pray and honor God. You would think that those who were going to church would at least manage a moment of prayer and ask for God's deliverance and guidance during this particular time. So Judge Sharpe found that to be an unjust discrimination and a violation of equal protection, and also a violation against the First Amendment to the Constitution, again, the first liberty. And for those of you who may be more interested in this issue of religious liberty, especially in today's context, we at Overfed and Undernourished presented a 10-part series on the questions that arise related to religious freedom within the American context. And I would invite you to look at all, if not, pick out some that are of particular interest to you during this 10-part series that we did maybe about 3-4 weeks ago. They may be of interest to you. I would also like to indicate that the ruling yesterday did not break new ground per se, because other federal district courts in Kansas and North Carolina also sided with the plaintiffs, indicating that state restrictions were in violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution, that the government shall not infringe upon the free exercise thereof, and that these were, there was no compelling reason for the state to interject itself here, especially at this particular point, to continue where some are open and some are not. The government does not have basically the right indiscriminately and without compelling reason to, if you want, pick winners and losers, those that open and those that close. Again, if there are compelling reasons, fine, state what they are, but not just kind of a blanket statement that this is the percentage, these will be open, this is the percentage, these will be closed. Religion and religious institutions were not asking for special treatment, it was asking for equal treatment. Certainly, they ought to be treated equally, and federal judges in various jurisdictions are finding more and more that to be the case. But I think that there's also an underlying issue which ought to be mentioned. Very often, we don't, being human beings, we don't appreciate some of the most precious things we have until either they're restricted or we outright lose them. Freedom, for example, the freedoms we take for granted. We see how a virus in China can find its way here to the United States and disrupt so much of our life, our daily freedoms that we often take for granted, going to the store and finding things that we want, and then finding that they're either rationed, they're not there. This was deeply disturbing and kind of a social and cultural shock to the American system. And certainly I think religious freedom and religious expression, the right to publicly gather and worship, has also sent shock waves, I think, through many people who, again, can take that for granted, that precious first liberty, that fundamental natural right given by Almighty God to offer God glory, praise, and thanksgiving, that this hunger and yearning and longing is something that is deep within the human person, because each and every person is made in the image and likeness of God. And in various degrees and ways, we acknowledge that. At some level, we acknowledge that there is indeed a supreme being for whom and to whom we owe our very existence and the existence of all that is. And while it's difficult during these particular times, we ought to remember that people prayed and worshiped in catacombs, they worshiped in basements, in attics, they worshiped in homes and in underground places like caves to hide from political and totalitarian regimes that were all too willing to eradicate religion, even to the point of mass killings. People prayed and worshiped God on battlefields and battleships, on airstrips. They worshiped in caves, in open fields, in rice paddies. They worshiped. And today we face our own challenges in our own time. Yes, it's not what we're used to, but the hunger is there, and the opportunity and the desire to worship Almighty God and to lift up praise and thanksgiving to Almighty God. So if we can stand with those great witnesses down through the centuries, who in difficult times, in persecutions, in the fear of death and torture, in times of great strife and war and conflict and persecution, which many of it is still going on today, they found a way to let God know how great thou art. May it be said of us in our own time that we did not do less.